Hi, welcome to Academic Market Insights, episode 2. I'm Dr. Russell Rhodes. With me is Dr. Larissa Ademiac. Say hi, Larissa.
Good morning.
Good morning. We're recording in the morning time. You can be watching this at any time. The goal behind these YouTube videos is to talk about how we incorporate real world market information, financial information in the classroom. And we chose to talk about the CPI this week. And the reason we're going to talk about the CPI, I'm going to go ahead and pull up a slide here. We're going to talk about the CPI because we're recording on October 9th and the September CPI is going to come out on October 10th. And the big question here is really why do we care about the CPI? And we care about the CPI. It gives us an idea as to really, back in the day, we used to refer to something as the cost of living, which is a number that they did away with. And I can remember being much younger when I didn't have to worry about the cost of living, and fixated on that the cost to keep yourself alive kept going up and up and up. CPI is pretty close to that because it gives you an idea of how much prices have changed for an average for a basket of goods. And they put the urban consumers in there, and I assume that we used to be more of a rural society. So I wonder if that wording is in there just uh, if that's a legacy term or not. I always thought the urban consumers was kind of funny. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, they calculate this and release it monthly before the market opens. As I mentioned, as we sit here, the CPI is going to come out the following day. There are three measures of inflation. We've got the producer price index, PPI, and personal consumption price index, PCE. PPI usually comes out the day after CPI. So they're not as much of a reaction to PPI. The Personal Consumer Price Index, the PCE, that index, it's always been kind of an also ran index, but recently the Fed chair made a comment about using the PCE instead of the CPI in some sort of situation. And the press took that and ran with it. And now they refer to PCE as the Fed's favorite inflation indicator. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I feel like it was one word that they ran with there. And the CPI, I just feel like is probably a better measure. It's not a perfect measure, but it's probably a better measure of the cost of living from back in the day. Now, why we care about it, and especially in the current market environment. Again, we're in the early part of the third quarter of 2024, um, and the Federal Reserve, they are in the process of lowering rates. In fact, the Federal Reserve right now, looking at the derivative markets, the expectation is that the Fed funds target rate is going to be around 3.5% by December of 2025. It's at 5% right now. So that's several 25 basis point cuts, or maybe a couple, maybe just 350 basis point cuts, depending on how they get there. The thing is, the Fed can achieve this as long as we are not concerned about inflation. And inflation has been trending lower over the past few months, but there's still a camp out there that thinks we may get a second round of inflation. We just dodged a bullet with the longshoreman strike that's been pushed out to January. And something we discussed last week in this space. But the Federal Open Market Committee, they've got two mandates. They have two things that they're trying to do. This is really what they're supposed to be doing. I know they get involved in financial. Back in 2008, they overstepped their mandate, and that happens periodically. But Fed Chair Powell in press conferences will refer back to their dual mandate. He'll do the same when he's testifying in front of Congress. And I like that because those are the main two things that the Fed should be thinking about, which is trying to have maximum employment or the lowest unemployment rate and keeping inflation under control. So the CPI number is very important in the current market environment because a higher CPI, higher than expected CPI, or any signs that maybe inflation is going to start popping back up, uh, would result in the Fed not having the flexibility that everybody believes they have right now. And that lack of flexibility would probably be taken pretty negatively by all the financial markets, both the equity markets and the bond markets. So with that, that's why we care and what it is. It's not just a single number. And Dr. A is getting ready to discuss how much data there really is in the CPI report. You can spend, I think you could be, I've been called a VIXologist. I think you could be a CPIologist with the
You
amount
really
of information there.
could.
Yeah. So I'm
Yeah,
turning it over to you.
thank you very much. Yeah, Dr. Rhodes is spot on. I think this was my Saturday night that I spent just looking through the data. I was texting with my sister. She was at the Blackhawks game in Milwaukee, and we were talking back and forth. And I said, "There's so much data." And what's really amazing, and this is all the data from the FRED website, which is the Federal Reserve Economic Database. And what's amazing about it is it's very granular. So you can get the price of toys. You can get the price changes in movie tickets and airline tickets. And to me, that was just fascinating. So I started digging through. And again, just to give you an idea, this is what it looks like when you open up the website. And because I knew we were talking about CPI, I just clicked on CPI. And this is what comes up. You can see over on the left-hand side how many data files there are. So there I am clicking through page after page, downloading different data sets that I was interested in. And I was interested in the all urban consumers, getting back to Dr. Rhodes' point about why is it urban as opposed to all, and avoiding anything that was a specific metro region and or a different country. So for example, both of us are in the Western Chicago suburbs, so you can find data on Chicago, and then they also include Naperville in that. So it's Chicago through Naperville. So it's okay. Obviously New York City has quite a bit of data. There's just a substantial amount of data. So after you spend a good Saturday night and quite a bit of Sunday morning going through the data and figuring out what you even want. Oh, I'll jump through here and then I'll go back to that last slide. I had almost 100 different files. And what I kind of like about this slide right now is you can't read any of this. It's just too much data to really even process, to really think about how do you create subgroups with all of this data to do anything of meaning. So I decided to start here, and this is a group, and this is a little less than 40 files, just because, and this was based on three things. One, that the data existed. Two, that we had data series starting in 1997, I think I had to cut off. So if your data, there was other data there that started in 2003, it got excluded. And that it was based solely in the US and not a specific metro area. So for example, I was curious, fruits and vegetables, non-alcoholic beverages. Right now, I'm a big fan of the athletic beer, which is beer for athletes, gluten-free, non-alcoholic. Oh yeah, I partied hard on Saturday night downloading all this data. Okay, so I was curious about some of these things. And again, the reason why I'm putting this out here is it's a ton of data. So let's go back a couple slides. And I found this one to be very fascinating. So when we think about the purchasing power, this is the idea of how far does your dollar actually go? And we can see that our purchasing power from, I always imagine this as 1910, just completely drops. So when you hear your parents, your grandparents talk, dollar doesn't go as far as it used to, you can clearly see that they are correct. Okay. So this doesn't take into consideration the fact that our wages have gone up. This is just the consideration of a single dollar, and a single dollar right now for my poor kids when they ask for $10, really that's not going to get much of a toy. Yeah. And even the dollar store has now gone up to $1.25, right? I also, if you ever get a chance,
The only thing that doesn't go up is the Costco hot dog.
so far, fingers crossed, that is a great deal. It's one of the few ways I can actually woo my kids to go to Costco. Uh, the other thing that I really loved about the Fred is when you go into one of these data files, they're going to give you, you can download all the data, but they're going to show you this graph. And they put in here, all of these gray bars are recessions. So you have a very clear view of what was really happening in the economy. So we have COVID here. We have the 2008. We have the stock bubble, or the dot-com bubble. We have I think this is the Thai recession that happened. We have the stock market crash. I want to say that this should be closer, or maybe the 87 crash wasn't as high, as effective. But then you can see some of these other crashes that have happened. And I think that's also a very fascinating thing that the Fred does for us. So when you're quickly looking at the data, you can see exactly what's happening. So again, get all this data. And because I'm a geek, I thought, okay, let's start playing with it. So I calculated the correlations, and you can see again that it's just a hobgodge of amount of data. And I calculated the correlations using return data on the CPI index. And the reason why we use return data as opposed to the straight data is it allows for us to compare apples to apples as opposed to apples to bananas. Okay. I also calculated the covariance with similar results. And there was one regression that I was able to run, or that I felt that had any kind of importance, because I had one correlation, I want to say it was in the 0.8. You're going to love this, Russell. Sorry, Dr. Rhodes, you're going to love what this is. Oh, yes. So the two things that had a high correlation with each other was the CPI for all items in the US and energy. So yes, I was able to prove that energy and all items have a high correlation. Um, and one of the reasons I thought this was almost comical to include in this discussion was that it was a lot of data digging and a lot of work to find a well-established pattern. So I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board to look a little bit further, but sometimes that's what happens, especially when you're looking at such large data sets. And I think that's it. So let me stop my screen share. And I think that's how I know I would approach that kind of conversation, particularly in a grad class.
I think it's great that energy is the one thing that it gives you gives you an idea of what the overall CPI is going to be.
Right.
And it really comes down to I've forgotten who was talking about this recently on someone was on Bloomberg TV just talking about how energy costs feed through to everything. And
Yeah.
logically, energy costs always feed through to because my next door neighbor, he runs a trucking company, runs logistics for a trucking company, and they're having a heck of a time paying people. Their energy costs have gone up a bit, et cetera. But there is a cost component of getting stuff to us, and when that goes up, it works its way through everywhere. So
Right.
I like that a lot, and I'm not surprised that that's the way. If you said there's one relationship or one
That was
predictor in all of those, I'd probably guess energy,
right.
but it's always worthwhile proving it. So
It is. And it's a fun data problem to work through.
so are you done working with CPI data?
No, I'm going to still dig
I
a
just
little
know
bit
there's so much out
more.
there.
Yeah, I
But
think there's got to be a relationship with the toys. I got to find out about the toys.
exactly. Well, there's
Mhm.
probably a seasonality.
There could be.
Yeah, if you take
You know,
take
I
that
would love to
seasonality out
even
of it, yeah,
compare the CPI number to Costco stock price.
I think that'd be a really good. You know what? I think Walmart, Costco,
Mhm.
Target, but that'd be an interesting one as well. Just if we're if CPI is going up, is that a good thing for Walmart? Because I do know that when things are tough, a lot of Target shoppers shift over to Walmart and then back,
Right.
depending on how they're feeling about their financial situation. So that'd be a good one as well. So there. We could sit here and go down this rabbit hole all day, but I'm late for a faculty meeting.
So
So
enjoy meeting.
I will enjoy the meeting. And with that, we appreciate everybody that stuck with us to this point. If you got something you want us to talk about, please let us know. But we'll continue to be back on a weekly basis. So thanks for, do the subscribe and all that kind of stuff as well. I'm going to be shameless for a second. So, all right, thanks for spending a little time with us. We appreciate it.
Have a good afternoon, guys.